No good story comes without a villain. At their best, villains can be powerful creations, jumping out of a writer's imagination and terrifying their readers or viewers. But it ain't easy. Lots of villains are duds, relegated to the very dregs of our cultural memories. Who was the bad guy in Thor 2? Was it Loki again? So, because I think way too hard about all of this stuff, I thought I'd start a little series all about villains and how they can be used in great stories. Whether it's the good ones, the bad ones, or the ugly ones, we'll take a look at exactly what makes a great villain. And we're going to start off with a mantra so simple, I'm amazed how often it isn't followed. Villains, they're people too. Yes, I know that sounds like a mantra that's straight out of some supervillain support group.
I'm bad, and that's good. I will never be good, and that's not bad. There's no one I'd rather be than me.
But it's a mantra to live by if you want to create a villain who is more than a character who is evil just because that's the way they are. No one likes Thor's dark elves. Most everyone loves to hate Cersei freaking Lannister. But instead of yet another video on the internet applauding Game of Thrones for its grey characters, I thought we could take a look at a series that did a pretty damn good job at creating weakly villains who were believable as people, and not just as an evil opposing force. And that series is BBC's short-lived The Musketeers. The show definitely took a few episodes to hit its stride, but by its second and third season, it really did a fantastic job at having its villains of the week feel like real people. People who had been driven over the edge in a time of immense inequality, where nobles could treat the common folk as property, women weren't even allowed a voice, and slavery was operating in full force. Over the course of the show, villains included everything from soldiers who were robbing towns because they were starving, to rebels whose fight for freedom was manipulated by a greedy thief who wanted nothing more than to steal from the royal treasury. There was even the king's own half-brother, who is tormented by how much he actually loves the king, while at the same time is plotting against him. I could sit here and list almost every episode in order, but instead I'll focus on one that has a lot of layers.
Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers? You get it. We both have layers.
That episode is Season 2's The Return, and the setup is initially simple. Athos, one of the Musketeers, is drawn back to the town he is the Count of. A town he abandoned after his wife murdered his brother and he was forced by law to hang her. In his absence, a neighboring lord, Renard, has started harassing the peasants there, hoping to drive them out so that he can claim the land for his son. Athos and the Musketeers have to try to train the townsfolk to fight in time to defend their lands. If that sounds a lot like the Magnificent Seven, I'd say that's because it's pretty much exactly that. But the devil is in the details. You see, one of the villains of this episode, Lord Renard, isn't just the archetypical evil noble. I mean, he is an absolute piece of human garbage, who in one scene sets up his men to take turns with a peasant girl. But he's also a piece of human garbage who reacts this way when his son dies in the battle for the town.
My poor boy.
It certainly doesn't make him any less evil, and our heroes don't even attempt to comfort him. But it does make him more human. That small detail, one that could easily not have been included by the writers, makes him feel like a real person. He was a father who loved his son, and he wanted so badly to give his son a legacy that he was willing to kill a whole town of people for their land. But the episode's not done there. See, in going back to his old stomping ground, Athos finds Catherine, his dead brother's wife, living in the ruins of their old manor house. She is a person who has lost everything. Her family went broke and left her with nothing, and her lord husband is now dead, killed by Athos's wife. She's squatting in a broken down house because she has nowhere else to go. But she still considers herself a lady, a noble with a title who sits well above the common folk in the world order of the time. When she discovers that Athos plans on giving away his land to the peasants who fight to save the town instead of giving it to her, a woman of noble birth, she does not take it well. She holds him up at gunpoint and tries to sell him out to Lord Renard without even a second thought. This act of treachery is evil. It is villainous, but we also understand her point of view as a person, even though we disagree with it. She's a woman who has lost everything in a world where a woman's worth is only as valuable as the man she marries. When Athos comes back to town, she finally has hope that she'll be able to claim the lands that should have been hers if her husband hadn't been murdered. Instead, Athos gives all those lands away back to the little people of the village. Suddenly, her hope is gone. She has nothing and has no way of ever getting what she had back. So as despicable as her treachery is, we can empathize with her. And that's how writers can make villains feel like actual human beings. They commit acts of evil, but always with a purpose, at least in their minds. In their minds, they're doing the right thing, whether it's for themselves or the world at large. They truly believe that their actions are justified. The best written villains aren't evil for evil's sake, they're people who, in one way or another, go too far for the things they want. The Musketeers, as a show, understood that, and put it into practice week in, week out. Its villains weren't cartoony caricatures, they felt like real people. People who loved, people who suffered, and people who just wanted to be happy. Oh, and there was also a really creepy horny guy with no redeeming qualities. You can't always knock it out of the park. So, a bit of public service announcement: if your interest is piqued by this video, The Musketeers is available on Netflix, and it's a great show. I've always loved the Musketeers in all their incarnations, but this is a really unique take on all of those characters. In particular, the Porthos and Aramis bromance is definitely squad goals. At the same time, the show also explores the time period with the context we have today. The king isn't some divinely chosen leader, he's part of a system that keeps inequality rife throughout the land, with squalid common folk fighting for scraps, while the king enjoys pheasants with his Spanish queen. It also comes with a ton of political intrigue, especially in the later seasons. And while that intrigue never nears anywhere close to the expertise of Game of Thrones, it's always very entertaining and a lot of fun. The main cast are all excellent, and you'll love to see them interact week to week, and you'll be fraught with worry as the series finale nears and things really just start to go boom. So if you need a new series to binge, it's a lot of fun, and there's only 3 seasons, so it won't take you that long.